Hello to Stampscapes, not live, just a recording here. This is going to be an experiment using the Vellum and another photo print, okay? These photo prints are free for download and printing on my Flickr account. And you can see the address down below. If you watch this video like immediately after I post it, I haven't formatted all that. I need to write all the links and everything like that, but you can check it out at some point in time. All right, so when you're using a piece of vellum and a photo print like this, remember it's two surfaces basically, okay? In traditional whatever stamping, okay? But vellum, being that it's translucent, okay, not quite transparent, you can see through it. So we have three surfaces that we can utilize for our imagery, okay? So keep that in mind, and the farther back in space, in theory, that you stamp, okay, so here's 1, 2, 3 surfaces like that, the farther back it can seem using the same types of ink, okay? So if I use like a black on this surface right here, and this is placed over the top, it should look farther back in the distance than if I stamp that image in black on the top surfaces, okay? Now sometimes, I mean, the difference can be kind of minimal. With certain types of inks, maybe it's a little bit more, there's a bigger difference depending on the kind of the ink penetration on this surface in particular. Okay, so if I stamp something on the back of it, certain types of inks might soak into the surface a little bit farther than the other types of inks, so it might look a little bit more translucent, okay? All right, so that being said, I don't have, this, I don't know, whatever, technique completely down. I know how it works in theory, and it works really very well, but kind of, I don't know, the particulars in terms of different types of inks, I'm never quite sure, how something is going to look. I think they all look pretty cool in the end result, though, but sometimes I'm a little bit surprised, sometimes pleasantly surprised, and sometimes just, I don't know. I haven't been disappointed, with anything with the vellum before and photo background, or just another type of paper in the background. You don't have to do vellum over photographs. It just makes it really easy having this kind of already established. Okay, we're going to use the Pavilion and Bridge Large here. And I was thinking about doing some mountains in the background, and this cloudy type of area down here, it's going to go into the water as well. And I thought I'd do a little bit of a horizon line in the background, like, there's a water line at the base of the mountains or something of that sort. Okay, so I'm going to try to get my bearings here and figure out where to place the imagery. All right, now in this type of imagery, this kind of a Chinese ink painting, traditional ink painting style, I don't know, but style, subject matter maybe. There's a lot of clouds in between things, so having all that cloudy background here is just kind of a nice kind of head start for the entire kind of mystical look of the locations that we are depicting. So so the photos are really a fun way to start. See, that mountain already looks like it's in the clouds. Okay, now see, this mountain, I'm not going to stamp it into this blue area right here, and I'm going with a photograph that has a little bit more contrast than a lot of my photographs, the way that I've formatted them. A lot of them I've kind of cut down the contrast between like blue sky and, very light clouds, white clouds. And that's so that we can stamp things, wherever without having this really definitive contrast in between kind of open sky and those cloud forms. So, and the reason why is I'm using this one is because I want to see that contrast through the vellum like that. Okay, you can see how it really kind of mutes out everything in the background. So right in here, you know, you can see there's a decent amount of contrast, but if you place this over the top of it, there's less. So sometimes with the photographs, you want to go with a little bit more contrasty looking photo, you know, sources. I have both on my Flickr account. I have some with, you know, very blue skies and everything like that, and the other ones are a little bit more muted so that you can stamp images wherever you want, okay? That's not to say, see here, I'm going to take this tip of this mountain into this sky just a touch like that, you know? Man, that's no big deal. All right. Okay, so let me get my bearings here. I'm touching this down, but I have to be careful a little bit because it's getting some of that wet ink on here. By the way, I'm using just regular dye-based inks on this. You could use something like a StazOn or something like that too. That's not going to be a bad thing to do at all. All right, so I'm going to be looking to stamp this pavilion and bridge roughly kind of centralized. I usually don't go so central with this type of image, but this one's so, you know, kind of pyramidal in shape and symmetrical. I thought it would be good to go, you know, very, I don't know, whatever, centralized in terms of the composition. Okay, so let's see here. It's going to go like that. And let's see where my horizon might be. So my horizon, I'm going to make a little bit of a mark right here. Okay. I'll go roughly, I think it'd be, I'll go roughly with this line right here. Okay, so on the back of this, what I'm going to do, there's going to be a front and back of my vellum right here. I think I'm going to go with, let's see. I want a horizon line. I was thinking about doing it with colored pencil. I guess I could do it with ink too. But let's see here. Let's see. Let me take a measurement here. So I'll go like this. I'll put another mark right there. I was thinking about going with a colored pencil, but I think this might be faster if I use some... I think dye-based inks will do the trick. I'm trying to think if the dye-based ink will dry on this just fine. I don't know. Well, let's see how this goes here. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a hint, or try to do a little bit of a hint of a horizon line here. Okay. Take some of this ink off a little bit. Okay, now remember, I'm doing this on the back of the vellum. I guess it could be on the front of the vellum just fine. I don't know. Okay. So you see, I'm just using like a, it's kind of like a grayscale. See that line right there? That's going to be my horizon line. You can do this. This is something you can do for anything. If you're doing a horizon line for like a lake or an ocean, really works for oceans really well. I'm finding the vellum, it really, you know, the vellum's consistency, it's really very nice doing this. I haven't done this on vellum before. It just glides along so nicely. Okay, normally I'd switch this around, but I have this mask laid down, so I'm going to come up like this. I usually flip it around so I can always use this downward stroke. Let's do some of this too. Let's see if we can blend it in. The vellum blends so nicely. I want it a little bit streaky though, kind of like water, you know, especially kind of doing it on the horizon like that. Okay, let's see how this looks. Okay, so this is what we're looking at right here. Let's see how this, okay, I'm going to flip it over too. So that's on the back of it. And let's see if that dye-based ink is dry. I think it's pretty dry. So you see like this? This is what we're looking at right here so far. Okay. See that little horizon right in there? Okay, now I'm looking at those mountains in there. Those were stamped in, like I said, the black dye-based ink, which are water-based ink. And let's see, I think I could use another little mountain over here. Let me figure out where. Let's go with one more mountain here. Okay, but what I'm getting at is this is stamped in dye-based inks, so it's water-based, of course. So one of the things that's nice about stamping in water-based inks, if you want to, and people with like Copic markers or alcohol markers will know this, you can stamp in a type of ink that's going to be able to accept, alcohol, potentially ink that can dissolve like a solvent style ink. So you can color directly on this with alcohol markers without worrying about this smearing. As long as the dye-based ink is dry. That impression right there might be a little bit wet right now, but let's go into this now with a little bit of color. I'm picking out some kind of muted tones. Here's some greens right here and a gray. I don't want to go too dark or bright with this color. At this point in time, I want to build it up if I do. Okay, so something like that. All right, so that being said, let's start adding in some extra volumes and shade into these mountain forms, okay? On other types of papers like cardstock, I've been doing watercolor paints or pencils on tops of these mountains and to just kind of flesh them out a little bit more, or really a lot more. Okay. Now these ones are going to have the clouds down below, so I'm kind of making the mountain peaks darker on the top portions like that. So it almost looks like they're almost bottom lit, which I guess they are. With all that light reflecting from the sky down into a very, very reflective moisture, created cloud. So it reflects a lot of light back up into the terrain. I'm talking about, in like real life too. So, that's what we're kind of referencing here at least, kind of directional light. All right, this is a little bit of that muted green going into here, and it's putting my gray back into solution and kind of mixing with it. So just keep that in mind, this ink, this alcohol ink is really sitting on the surface of this emulsion coated style of paper, printer, inkjet printer paper. Okay, and that should be that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this area, and I'm just going to diffuse these clouds a little bit more. Let's get our bearings on how dark those will be. See, see how it's knocking it? I'll go like half and half so you can see how much lighter it is. And you see right over here with this over the top. But let's create a little bit of more of a kind of a graceful transition from the mountain into the clouds. So let's put a little of this cloudy kind of form in front of, or actually over the top of this mountain. It just kind of looks like it's going into the clouds, but we can actually put, some white pigment ink in front of the clouds. I mean the mountains. Now this is a step right here. I mean, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I think it'll make it look a little bit more recessed into the background. All right, so I kind of put it on the base of it. I didn't put it over the top of it because I want those ones to be nice and, varied in terms of our light and dark up here. But I mean, if you wanted to push that one back even farther, visually, you could go over the top of it, but I would leave some a little bit darker, just for, you know, some variation. Okay, let's get our bearings here, and let's see what that horizon line's looking like. Gotta remember, which one's the front, is it? I think this is the front of it. I can't even tell now. Okay, so that is that right there. There's my horizon, and then this will be stamped on the front of this card, okay? So I'm just seeing if I need to vary anything on here. I'm thinking about making, I want a little boat in this water area, and I'm trying to decide if I want to do that on the back side of this so it looks a little bit farther back, or if I want to do it on that front. I guess I'll do it on the front just for a little bit more impact, I think. All right, now on this, I think I'm going to add a little bit of a bluish tinge to this water here too. So I'll use a little bit of colored pencil. I guess you can streak on some dye-based inks or whatever you want to, but this will make just really quick work of this, okay? And just something you can make the grayscale a little bit more interesting from a kind of a color perspective. It just, you know, it gave it a little bit of temperature. Okay, see that little bit of bluish tinge? And let's take a look and see what that's going to look like over this. Okay, now here's some other considerations. You know, you might have like some overhanging, I don't know, foreground in this scene, in which case you can stamp it on the back of the vellum. I probably wouldn't do it on the photo, but I can put it on the back of the vellum and some others on the front of the vellum. And I think I might do that on this one. I think if I just stamp this right here, it would look okay, but I think a little bit more depth in the scene would be kind of nice. So let's see. I think I'll go for my bamboo branch in here. I think that would be the perfect foreground in here. And let's do some in, let's do it in, I was going to say I can do it in green, but I don't have like I don't know if that green is going to stick to this really well in dye-based inks, okay? So I think I'm going to, and I don't have like a green stays on, so I think I'm just going to go with the black stays on right here. Okay, this is the back of it. Okay, I'll have this coming in from the side, or kind of a little bit hanging over the top. I'm not stamping very much of it. I might stamp some more on the front side of it, so we get a little bit of depth within our foreground area. Okay. In theory, you know, we'll see how it looks after I stamp everything out. Okay, so see that right there? See, it's a little bit darker on this side because that's where I stamped it. But here's the front side of it, okay? So it's a little bit lighter. So I might be able to get another couple bamboo branches like on the front side right here where it's black. And then these ones will be on the back side of the vellum and be a little bit more of a, you know, kind of a darker grayscale. It's not going to be light because it is black after all. Just blowing that there, and that'll go on here, okay? All right, so let's do, I think, let's go ahead and stamp out our pavilion right now. Okay, let's see. So many images in the new line. I almost need another set of blocks here. So I don't, excuse me, I don't have to keep switching off if I'm going to use another image again. that is. All right, there we go with our pavilion and bridge. And let's try to roughly center this. It's hard to tell what's center using this see-through piece of paper, you know, the vellum. Okay, is that roughly center? I guess it is. And stamp it out. Large stamp. Stand up if you need to get a little bit of leverage and use pressure. Top, bottom, left, right, center. Okay. Always stamp with a little bit of a cushion. I happen to have a ton of paper underneath me, scratch paper at this point in time with all the new imagery. But see that right there? There's black, and that's on the this is on the front of it, and that's on the back. Okay. All right. So that is that, and now we need to merge this with this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the photograph, I'm going to spray, I got a little finger smudge there. I'm going to spray it with, it won't even show. I'm going to spray this with a spray adhesive, okay? And then we'll marry the two. Now in theory, you can spray the back of this, right? But this vellum will probably curl and bow, you know, if you get that spray adhesive on there, because it's very thin, right? It's 50 pound. But this is thicker right here, photo paper. So this won't be really affected by that sealant. So we're going to spray it on here instead, okay? All right, so let me pause here and go and do that. All right, as you can see, this has been sprayed with a spray adhesive. We have a nice even coat. All right, now let me see here. Had to make sure that I'm doing. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell which is the front and the back. Okay, this is the front here. That looks darker than that, right? All right, and just try to get that, you know, reasonably. Oops. I was going to say reasonably lined up. That wasn't very good there. Okay, so. Okay. Inevitably, what you end up doing is you end up kind of trimming the edges anyway, okay? This vellum was slightly larger than the photo, okay? Which I get, you know, maybe it's good. Gives you a little bit of leeway. Okay. Okay, so see that right there? Look at that kind of nice depth that we have working in there. Even that photo of the clouds down here, it gives it a little bit of a reflective quality down there. I got a little smudgy marks on my vellum. That's one of the bad things about the vellum is if you get a smudge on the front or back of the vellum, you can see it in the end result because it's see-through, of course, or translucent, okay? All right, now let's add in some of our additional depth, okay? And we'll go with the bamboo branch again. Let's see if we can take advantage of this whole translucency translucent quality of the vellum here, okay? Need to use too much of this because I won't be stamping out too much of the bamboo. So you get multiple layers in the foreground. You can achieve a lot of depth, you know, from our nearest forms to our farthest forms, but you can also achieve a lot of depth in, you know, a very small space, like, you know, all the, you know, the foreground imagery could have depth. You know, you can have closer foreground and farther foreground, okay? Okay, see that right there? I mean, it's just a subtle difference, okay? Now, I could have pushed depth, you know, I could have blotted this off first, and then stamped on the back of the vellums to make some of those branches seem a little bit farther away. But look at all that depth. I think that did achieve. There's just some subtle, kind of value changes right within that foreground there. I think that framed off the scene really nicely too. Here, let me go with a little bit more, a couple little tips of my bamboo. Actually, let me ink up a little bit more than I think I'm going to use, just in case. Let's have a couple more. Just coming right across the top like that, okay? And maybe that wasn't enough. I was being too, whatever, conservative with my application of that. There we go. All right. Looks like we're looking out into the scene with kind of up from underneath a tree. Okay. And, okay, that little smudgy right there is kind of bugging me, so I'm going to put some of my reeds right here and just, if it doesn't cover it up completely, it's not any big deal, but I just want to obscure it slightly, okay? All right, so this, I don't know, kind of works as a kind of a lower framing device. I guess it pushes depth again a little bit too. And let's see here. Let's take a look at this little fisherman here. Okay. It kind of reiterates, this area being a lake and, being water. Okay. And where are my trusty tiny rocks? All right, let me pause here and find my rocks. All right, I have stamps and pads and pens everywhere. Hard to find these. Okay, this is my little tiny rocks stamp. And I don't know, just kind of creating a little bit of a shoreline. They almost look like water lilies too. And see, what I'm doing is I'm starting off darker, and then as I move up here, it's kind of a lighter impression because this is getting drier on my stamp. So, see that right there? What that did down there? Kind of gave it some nice texturing, and I don't know if that's reiterating water, but it's just creating a little bit of variation within that space, and I think it's good. Okay, let's see. Let's bring in some colors into this piece right here. These pavilions are often kind of reddish in hue. And let's see if we can bring some of that. I'm going to take a look and see some imagery online as we do this. I brought up some imagery on the web, and these pavilions are often kind of reddish in the pillars, okay, and or in the columns or pillars, I don't know, whatever. And the rooftops are kind of this greenish tinge, okay. I don't know, whatever they are, the tiles up top. So I'm going to add in some of that type of coloring in here. I don't want to darken it in too much, okay? But I just want to give it the gist of that color. It's like a greenish kind of blue, blue-green maybe, kind of like a bottle green color. I don't know if you can see that. It's just kind of a hint of that color in there. And what I mentioned was I don't want to color it in too much because I want there to be, the lighting that's provided by the shading of the piece. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to think of what color I should do the walkway to. I'm gonna look at some photos and reference some of that right now. Okay, I just took a look at some images, and this kind of bridge right here, this bridge right pavilion came from a specific, actual pavilion on a lake. And I'm seeing what this coloring was, but the coloring, there isn't too much of a kind of a tone to this, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of green right here, because these side kind of flanking areas right here are a slightly different tone than that in reality. So, and then I think what I'm going to do, I mean, we can leave this as is, but you can see it just looks a little bit better when you flesh things in a little bit, okay? Even if something represents, I don't know, white, okay? You bring a little bit of tone into it, and it just gives it more character, and it gives the color scheme a little bit more depth. Thinking about using figures on this right here. Some people have used Hiker and Child, I think. Okay, so this is a little bit of bluish tinge. Let's go with a little bit of this lighter blue, kind of a warmer blue in the water as well. So remember we have some tone in the water on the back of it, but it's more of like a shade just to kind of create that little bit of a horizon line. And it also I don't know, it separates, I don't know, whatever, surface from sky, I guess. I don't know, that's not sky up there, there's supposed to be mountains behind here, but it just creates that separation for added depth. But that's what the tone on the back. So you can still color in on the front of this too. You can add color on the front and back of it. But see that little bit of that bluish tinge that's starting to appear right there? It's starting to kind of, it almost looks like it's glowing to me. So I'm not coloring in this whole thing right here. You want to leave some areas a little bit lighter. So maybe in these little rocks down here, maybe those rocks are in the shallows, and you can kind of treat that a little bit differently too, as you get deeper, deeper water tends to look a little bit different. But the biggest thing is that you just kind of vary things, it's going a little bit darker, lighter, a little bit darker throughout here. It's, when I say darker, it doesn't mean it's dark, but just darker than, maybe an area that's right next to it. So it just creates a little bit more visual richness. Now see at the base of this little fishing boat, I can add a little bit of a stronger shadow. Shadows don't have to be always like dark. They can just be very light. Like my hand right here is creating this shadow on this piece of paper right now. It's not like a black shadow or something like that. Okay, and we'll create a little bit of a shade underneath that pavilion right there. This pavilion is long enough. If you have like a couple characters in there, I was thinking I might be able to add, some little characters like this. Here's my little mother and child here. I don't know if I'm going to use, I'm going to stamp them out on the side here, and I'll decide if I want to add them in or not. I think I do. I haven't used them in a scene yet, so I think I want to add them in. There we go. That's kind of fun. Kind of creates a strong kind of visual lead-in, to say the least, huh? All right. Trying to think of anything else that I want to add in here. If I want to add in some extra kind of fog or mist, that might be kind of nice. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this down and I'm going to mount it, and I'll format this into a card. And then let's decide if I want to add in, a few finishing touches here and there. Maybe, oh, wait, here. Maybe some paint pen here too. Okay. So, just a little bit of highlighting maybe. And I'll do it in, on the pavilion itself, because that's kind of the, the focal point of the scene. Now everything's kind of a little bit dark, so I don't want to add in too much of this. Okay. But I'm just adding it in a couple of the little areas that are already light. Okay, I'm not kind of inventing kind of an illumination somewhere. I'm just kind of going into a couple areas that are already a little bit light. Okay, so it kind of has a little bit of light sparkling off the surface. And here, why don't we do this? We'll add, some kind of little shimmering light down here in the water too. So I'm doing these little dots, kind of in little bit of a horizontal line kind of application. It just makes things a little bit more kind of sparkly. Do you see those right there? Okay. All right, so let's see. Let's go and format this. I do need to trim this off a little bit too. There's a slight kind of overhang here. You can see it right there. So we want to trim that off before we format this. All right, there is our card formatted. And I've been looking at it, deciding on whether I should stamp a quote or something like that. It seems like there's something, ripe for the positioning right here. I thought about a word, just a single word stamp right here, like dream or something like that. It's kind of, it's a dreamy kind of location like that. And I don't know, someone taking a walk with their kid like that. It's, it's kind of like a dreamy, I don't know, it's not a dreamy scenario, people do that, but it's kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like looking back and thinking about some fun times or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to stamp just some birds. I'm going to use just a portion of my gulls stamp. Okay. Portion of it. There's, what is there, 2, 4, 6, 7 birds on here. I'm going to stamp 5. I'm going to leave out the larger ones just so I can get a little bit of, push these back in the distance a little bit farther. And I thought over here would be good. Put them right in these clouds maybe. Stamp them a little bit lower. Something like that. And I'm going to put them in a little bit more cloud, whatever structure in here. And I'll bring in a little bit of a diffusion into this area too, just to kind of incorporate the whole setting into this cloudy element that's, in the background and influencing those mountains and everything like that. So we have this applied on whatever the third surface, layer, I guess, of the scene. Now we're doing it on the first layer as well. So, you're just kind of building up a little bit more depth with this. Yeah, see, I'm putting some over these bamboo branches as well. And I'll put some of these birds in a little bit of, that cloudy mist like that. Okay. And let's see. I'll kind of blend this in a touch. I didn't realize that brilliance ink is kind of standing out quite a bit on the over the top of this vellum right here. So Let's kind of blend it in a little bit more. I'm looking at it from a slightly different angle, so I didn't see that. Kind of interesting. All right. So that being said, yeah, it could be a good thing. You know, you can apply all this on kind of in a much faster process. A lot of times it kind of really, it lightens up a lot usually when I stamp it over the top of other surfaces, you know, single layer surfaces. Okay, so I put a little bit at the base of that fishing boat. About like so. All right, so that it kind of reiterates what's going on in these other areas. At the far end of this, let's put this in a little bit of a mist, I think. I might add a little bit of shadow to this now that I look at this pavilion right here. Let's add a little bit of kind of shadow touches, because this is supposed to be, you know, kind of like right in the water here, or a little bit more so. So I'll kind of add in a little bit of a shadow touch around it, like this. Okay. So a little bit of shading like that. Kind of makes it stand out a little bit more too. Maybe I should use some black as well. It kind of sits the pavilion into the scene a little bit more. That being said, this pavilion, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, you know, a really cool application of this pavilion, I think, will be just kind of like outer space out here, you know, Milky Way, whatever, galaxies, and this thing kind of like going into this kind of otherworldly setting. I think that would be really cool. Okay, there we go. So we've kind of, you know, put this on a little bit more of a foundation, I guess. And then we'll come back in and blend it in a little bit more with some of this cloudy texture. I'll just kind of dab it around at that far end, like so. And you can put some of it on the pavilion too. See, it kind of makes it a little bit lighter up there, like it's a little bit more airy, and the, you know, it's being illuminated in the mist, like that. Let's put a little bit coming over some of this walkway as well. See that right there? How I just kind of altered it slightly. And doing the same on the other side a little bit. All right, and I think that should do it there. I think those little airy touches kind of finish this piece off nicely. So there's little shimmers down there too, like that. I want to go in and do something else, do this again, or not this one again, but do another piece where you know, there's much brighter tones in this. But I think this is a good little first kind of experiment with this scene right here. I think we've created a pretty good deal of depth, which I think is pretty conducive for this piece right here. We have this really strong focal point and visual lead-in like that. And then, you know, the background is out here. I think it'll look good on, you know, a piece of matte paper too, and just finishing it off. But we've created a lot of depth in here with that vellum. And if you haven't used vellum before, you can see kind of the different looks you can get from it like that. You know, there's that really soft kind of, you know, separation between the imagery that's really interesting to kind of incorporate into your scenes, and you know, to create that extra I guess it's kind of textural depth that we're creating there, because it is so translucent, and imagery that's on the third layer or something like that from the front. It and I just tends to soften it up a little bit. So easy way to create depth and textural range in your scenes like that. Just to have some spray adhesive, would be my recommendation. It makes it a lot easier to adhere all these different layers down here. So I've stuck this vellum over the top of the photo, and the photo is on top of this little white piece of white cardstock. And then again, I applied some spray adhesive to that. And then there's that. So there's 1, 2, 3 layers of spray adhesive on there, made, done in very quick order with some spray adhesive. You don't have to have it. Some people have used glues, but if you do that, just kind of sponge it on kind of in a very light way to adhere your vellum to that first layer especially. And there's some videos on how to do that. Not on the Stampscapes channel, but I watched a video where someone did that. I think they diluted some white glue or something like that, or crafting glue, and they got a really good, really nice, smooth, even pairing of that vellum and cardstock. Okay, anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you like this video, hope you like and subscribe.